sorry if you're at home. This is Wednesday, the first day back from Christmas break. And I'm sorry if you're sick. That's terrible. We all feel for you and all that. But you're going to need 4 blank note cards whether you're in class or at home. I do have a couple of people who still need to show me a signed test. You have 1 more day for that. And here I'm just going to run through the what's coming up. Monday, you have a map quiz on Asian landforms. We'll go over it 1 more time today. You are going to find it remarkable how much you remember. You're going to today say to yourself, either I know 66% of this or I know 75% of it already. It just is going to take a tiny bit of focused study. You've got this. You're pretty close. Next, you have some lessons that I want you to read. Lesson 44, I handed you a worksheet. That's just like I just want you to go back and read that. It's about Isaiah and Micah. Isaiah, you recited the passage about. It's literally just making sure you've kind of collected that last little bit. Lesson 48 and 49. Okay. 48 is about ancient Native Americans. We are going to talk about this today. What I have great news for you is that at the end of today, you are going to know more about ancient Native Americans than your parents do, and more than almost all of your friends, because most people know almost nothing about the original inhabitants of North and Central America. So today we are going to talk about the ancient Native Americans. And when I say ancient, I mean pretty much anything in the BC part of history. So we're going to talk about 4 different chronological, 4 different groups of people that settled in North and Central America BC. And then we're going to kind of stop there, and Native Americans in both North and Central and South America show up in next year's text as well, because we're doing world history, not just European history. So that's why Native Americans today. That's lesson 48. Lesson 49 is the last new thing that will be on your test. That is the only thing that these note cards are about. Athens, Sparta, Greek history. Your discussion question will be on this. We will talk about this on Monday. This is important. Come ready to do your quiz fast, because we're going to get to the Greek stuff and we'll be talking about that stuff. It's really good stuff. So these 6 note cards are from lesson 49. You will only be reading 48 as a follow-up to what we do in class today. And that's your homework. Oh, and start studying for your test, please. I will send an email and I will post on Google Classroom a study guide. I will send it in an email and I will post it on Google Classroom, both, so that you will have a study guide and you can do it. It is not a lot of note cards. It's not a huge amount of material. If you think back, we haven't covered that much new stuff since our last test. Any questions at all about anything that's coming up? No? Okay. So, can you cut the lights, please, Nate? If people pray, when people pray, they are thinking about things that are in their world, their immediate world. When Native Americans pray, what are the things that are around them that you think would show up in their prayers? Nature, right, or animals. So when I looked up Native American prayers, and there are a lot of them that you can look up and read, most of them were very nature focused, because, of course, their point of focus for praying is going to be the things that are around them. So you can see in my picture here, there's a sun, there's a moon, there's the wind, that's the fat chubby wind angel blowing wind right there, and there's rain. I'm going to start the class by reading you this Native American prayer blessing. It's Apache, but it could be, there's a whole bunch of them on that I was able to find. So I'm going to start right here. You see the pictures, and here is the opening prayer. May the sun bring you new energy by day. May the moon softly restore you by night. May the rain wash away your worries. May the breeze blow new strength into your being. May you walk gently through the world and know its beauty all the days of your life. And that is improper grammar. There should not be an apostrophe there. All right, so that's a blessing from the Apache Indians, and you can turn it, no, leave the lights off because we are going to take a moment to go over the Asian landforms. All right, you guys know this better than you think. So think with me, there are 3 sections on this map. There is a section that's right up here in Russia. What is this called? Well, not east, but it's this direction, so it's west. It's the West Siberian Plain. It's a flat area in Siberia, northern part of Russia. There is another area right here. It's very high area, and what is it called? So it's the Plateau of Tibet. Remember that it's high. It's like mountains, but it sort of stays high and flat. There is a third area right here that is the Gobi Desert. It's in between Mongolia and China. So 3 areas, Siberia, Tibet, and the Gobi. Now, Tibet is high, and water flows what direction? Down. So there are a bunch of rivers that come out of Tibet. The one that starts right here and that flows down through Pakistan is which river? Indus. It's what India is named after, the Indus River Valley, but it is in today's Pakistan, not in India. But there is a river that is properly in India, and you watched a movie about it. It's called the Ganges River. Now, out of Tibet, there are 2 major rivers that flow east toward the coast of China. The one on the northern side is called the Yellow River. The one on the southern is called the Yangtze River. The Yellow River and the Yangtze River. There is one more river that is also a Y, but it is the boundary of, it's the western boundary of the plain of Siberia before the geography changes. This river is called what? It's the Yenisei River. So maybe that's one that you need to go back and work on a little bit. There are 3 sets of mountains. One of the mountains is the border inside of Russia between Asia and Europe. This set of mountains is called the what? The Ural Mountains. That's the border, Asian, European, Russia border. Another set of mountains is in between Kazakhstan and Mongolia. What is this river? These mountains right in between Kazakhstan and Mongolia. This might be one you have to practice a little. Okay. You know the famous high mountains are the Alps in Europe. This one sounds a little bit like it. It's the Altai Mountains right here. Okay, there's another set of mountains. It's on the border of the Tibet Plateau, but they're actually in Nepal. They contain the highest mountain in the world, and they are called the what? The Himalayas. What is the actual highest mountain in the world? Mount Everest. Very good. And this is not on your quiz, but what is this group of this country that is made up of islands that's off the coast of India? I showed you pictures of it. Anybody remember the name?
Are they the ones that were like
Maldives?
Yeah, the Maldives. Good. The Maldives Archipelago. Right down here. Very good. All right, let's do water. Bodies of water. Ready? You know where India is. What is this water on the side? The Arabian. And on the other side of India? The Bay of Bengal. Let's go up here. What river is north of Siberia? What did you say? It's the one that starts with a K. Kara Sea, the Kara Sea. Now, all the way over on this side of Siberia is what sea? East Siberian Sea. So you know how west and east go? West and east go. This is a West Siberian Plain, East Siberian Sea. They're both related to Siberia. Let's keep going down and around. This is the Sea of Japan, because this is the country of Japan right here in Korea, Japan. Keep going down a little bit, and this sea is called the East China, distinguished from the South China Sea. And that's everything that's on the quiz.
What about the Red Sea?
It's not on the quiz. I did mark a little water thing on there just so you could orient yourself, but it's not on the quiz. All right, everybody good on this? Better than you thought for not having thought about it in 2.5 weeks? Not exactly. Okay, we're going to go on to the main part of our lesson today, and I need the lights back on, please. Today we're talking about ancient Native Americans. We're studying world history. We have in world history we've talked a lot about things around the Mediterranean Sea. We've touched on England a little bit with Stonehenge. We've talked about India. We've talked about China. But we haven't talked at all about the continent of North and South America. So today we're going to talk about the people that settled in North America, who then eventually sort of made their way down through Central America to South America. But we are going to be talking about just the BC part of this, just what happened in the ancient times, if we qualify ancient as before Christ. All right, I'm going to teach you some today, but you're also going to do a project. You are going to be doing, it's called a Choose Your Own Adventure project. I've got the adventures for you to choose from, and you're going to do a presentation in class. Like just a presentation where you just show your project and talk through it. It's not something where you have to do a lot of preparation outside of the project. But before you ever do any creative project, what do you need to do first? Yeah, because you can't go and be creative when you have nothing to say. This is life lessons. Don't try to be creative before you learn something. Go learn some stuff and then be creative with it. You'll make your creativity so much more interesting than if you just try to do whatever happens to already be inside of you. Go do some research, get some content, and then use it to be creative. So the very first, the kind of preliminary thing that you always do is research. I have the minimum, get at least 6 distinct facts down. You could have a lot more than that. There's a lot on every one of these Native Americans. And then you're going to be doing a Choose Your Own Adventure. But I'm not going to tell you the Choose Your Own Adventure until we first split up and say which group of Native Americans you are going to be doing your project on. All right, so in order to do this, I need you to do an activity where you're going to have to stand up and move around the room. That back corner is the letter A. This corner is the B, this corner is a C, and that corner is a D. And I need you to rise to your feet and go to the corner that best represents what is your answer to this question. Where would you most like to take a vacation? New York City, the mountains, the Caribbean, or the Egyptian Nile?
Get me to the beach.
New York City's back there in A. This is the mountains.
Oh, wait.
Where's
This is not a group project, so you don't have to be like with people particularly. The Caribbean's over here, and the Egyptian Nile back there. David, you're like standing, take the Nile. And Wesley, New York City is fun. All right, another question. What sport do you enjoy most? This can be watching or playing. Football, American football in the back corner, soccer over here, basketball in the third corner, or dancing in the back? Football, soccer, basketball,
Come on,
dancing.
no one's gonna pick basketball.
Wait. I guess
What are you guys in the middle for? Is that a no sport? Oh, y'all are all football? No. No, because then people would opt out of my
Wesley's
next
a
question.
dancer. Third Wesley.
Okay. All right, here's your third question. What flower are you most like? If you're most like a rose, go back to letter A. If you're like an orchid, you know what orchids are like? Orchids are expensive and they take a lot of care. They really have to be taken care of. Orchids are over here. Daisies, happy, bright, cheerful, happy daisies, up and see. And then the back one, dandelions. That's the one that you blow. They're like a weed.
Oh.
And then they scatter everywhere. Dandelions in the back corner. So what are you, a rose, an orchid, a daisy, or a dandelion? All right. Now freeze where you are. Freeze where you are. And with the numbers in this group, which are 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, divided by 4, we need to have 3 or 4 people per section, which means you guys are good, you guys are good, you guys are good. Of this section, is there 1 or 2 people that had also ended up in B at some point that would do a move to B? Yes? Okay. All right, so this is your split. And our absent students are Harper and Madison. So I'm going to assign them to these 2 groups, okay? And it doesn't matter. So you guys in the back, the letter A people, y'all are Paleo Indians. You guys are the Archaic Indians, and I'm going to put Harper in there. You all are the third one, the Adena Indians. And you are the Hopewells, and I'm going to add Madison to your group for the Hopewells. All right, go back to your go on back to your table. I'm going to give you a handout and circle the one that relates to your. Yeah, circle your thing, and then we're going to go over the choose your own adventure part of the project. Okay.
What was that?
Now, please circle your whatever you're doing. Okay. Everybody should have something circled at the top. And we are now going to look at your 5 choose your own adventure options. All right, after researching, because you always research first, you got to have content before you start being creative. After researching, you are going to pick from one of these options. Number 1, an annotated illustration. This means that you do a full page color illustration of your people group. You're drawing it or doing something, or some multimedia art sort of way of doing it. On the drawing, you mark 6 places that you want to explain. So if you were doing a particular kind of, let's say a Native American group that had decorated pottery, you might draw in a decorated pottery thing and then mark it as one of your 6 places. On a separate piece of paper, you're going to explain what the 6 things are that you marked. At least 1 complete sentence of explanation for each of the 6 things that you marked. That's choose your own adventure number 1. Here's choose your own adventure number 2. Create a superhero. I have a male and female superhero template. You can use mine or find your own, it doesn't matter. Create a superhero that represents your civilization. Make up an inventive name for your hero that represents something about your civilization. Design a uniform and a logo that's appropriate for your civilization. Use pictures, symbols, or words that show 3 powers and 1 weakness of the civilization. So superhero for your particular group, Paleo Indian superhero would have what 3 superpowers and what would be the weakness? Create a slogan your hero would say. By the way, please don't start designing your superhero until you've done research. You have to have content before you can be creative. Third, choose your own adventure is a Dear Diary. Dear Diary, 2 different diary entries, both of which are a substantial paragraph, and talk about things. You work into it things that show that you have done research about the civilization. Number 4 is also a writing, but it's a different kind of writing. It's a perspective writing. For number 4, it will also be in first person in I form, but you are going to say how a typical person from this civilization would view modern inventions and modern ideas. So you're going to use the first person to talk about the perspective of, let's say, the archaic Indians if they came into our modern world and saw modern things. You pick 5 different modern things and you write at least 3 sentences on each one. I'm giving you 5, but you can switch these up if you have better ones than this. But you would say, for instance, what would an archaic Indian think about a tank? What about a cell phone? What would the archaic Indian think about Disneyland? About your weekly chores? And about an all-you-can-eat buffet?
They probably had all-you-can-eat buffets.
Maybe. Research before you say. All right, that's the 4th one. And the 5th one is a song rewrite. Rewrite the lyrics to a well-known song and make it about your ancient Indian civilization. Do change the entire song so that it's actually reflecting your own words and it says things about the civilization. Rhyming is optional. If it sounds good, make it rhyme if you want. Please turn in the original lyrics and the rewritten ones. So every one of these is a presentation, but it's not a separate presentation. It's just you will show your illustration and you will explain the 6 things that you picked out. Or you will show your superhero and you'll explain it. Or you can read or sing your song if you do a song. However you'd like to do it. It's a choose your own adventure. You pick your adventure and make sure it's about the group that you have circled at the top of that. Any questions on the project? All right, you guys ready to actually learn about the Native American groups? We're going in chronological order. You should have 4 blank note cards because I want you to take 4 notes about the 4 groups. Yes? So you have 4 note cards, please, because I'm about to flip the side and you are going to start writing about them. Yesterday I posted on Google Classroom about to say just make sure you have note cards tomorrow. And I posted in, well, obviously 8th graders don't read their Google Classroom.
Yeah.
I got a response from a 6th grader within 10 seconds probably. They are on there all the time.
That's because
I
we're
didn't
new to
notice
this.
until
We have
now.
to
Addicted
We're
to
too done with
screens.
this.
Yes.
We're ready to
actually
move
doing
on.
something
We were doing
productive.
something physical
Yes.
and they were
All right.
scrolling on the phone.
It's time for notes. It's up to you. If you have to sort it out, sort it out. But
Thank you.
Paleo Indians goes on your first note card. All right. Remember what I said, that we are talking about a part of the world that we haven't yet talked about in ancient times. We're also talking about how the civilization developed. Civilizations usually develop at first with people who are exploring, and then it's a while before they settle into stationary communities. So we're going to start right here with Paleo Indians on the back. Please, this is your note. Earliest people to roam North America. They traveled around a lot and they followed herds of animals. I'll turn off the lights and show you pictures after everyone's gotten this note down. wanted to show you. Where did the Paleo Indians come from? Well, most historians agree that they came across a land bridge that existed in between Siberia and Alaska. Now, why? I want you to think about this for a minute. We're talking about a time in world history when there was a significant amount of water in the world that was in ice caps, an ice age of sorts. When there is a lot of water in ice, will the ocean levels be higher or lower? Think about this. The amount of water in the world stays stable because of our atmosphere. You know, like rain cycles and all of that. So if the water is in the ice caps, is there more of it or less of it in the ocean?
Less.
There's less. So will the water levels be higher or lower?
Lower.
They're going to be lower. If they're lower, then there will be areas that will be exposed land that maybe are not exposed when the temperature of the world gets warmer and the ice caps start to melt. So as the temperature increases, what happens to the ocean levels? They get higher, right? Because the water's not in the ice anymore. It's going into like all over the world oceans. So when more water was in the ice, there was exposed land in the area that we call the Bering Strait now. The Bering Strait is deep enough that boats can go through it, but it's not like a super, super deep part of the ocean. You know how there's some parts of the ocean that are really deep and some parts that are more shallow. There may be more part of the continental shelf. So there were people that moved across the land bridge from Siberia into Alaska. And then if you look over here, you can see that there was ice. There was ice that covered even parts of North America. I don't think down to Virginia, but like Pennsylvania had some significant ice coverage. Most of the states north of us in Virginia did. So there was ice here, but there was a stretch of travelable land that was part of the places that people could migrate. This means that the Paleo Indians were first migrating to Alaska, to Canada, to the northern parts of North America. And we know that there were Native Americans that were doing this because there were some of them who just stayed there, right? Have you all ever heard of the Inuit people in Alaska? Mm-hmm. The Inuits, like when I was young, people called them Eskimos. Yeah. But like their actual name is the Inuit people. They're up like stay up here. Well, not everybody keeps moving. Some people like find a life and find a place and they sort out ways to, like the Inuit did a lot with like figuring out how to eat, seals and whales and how to use things to live in fairly cold climates. Other people might want to keep moving, right? I am not at all saying that one person walked from Siberia all the way to Texas. That's not how the migration of people works. People move much slower than that. They move and they find places that make sense. They learn how to take care of themselves, and then perhaps future generations, maybe many generations later, want to explore more or see that there's a better place to live. Or perhaps as part of their migratory lifestyle, they discover other places that are great places to live. So the movement of people through the land bridge, through Canada, into the central part of America, North America, was slow. But I'm also talking about a lot of history, thousands of years of history. So there's a lot of time for all of this to happen, and we're taking these on kind of in order. So the first people were the Paleo Indians. The Paleo Indians, as far as we know, were not establishing villages and towns. They were hunting and gathering. So a lot of times when people are first moving into an area, that most of their energy has to go to survival. How do you survive? How do you find food? You gather berries, you gather nuts, you find plants you can eat, you hunt for animals, and this is what you're doing. Yeah. Yes. They were also hunting perhaps really large animals. Like this could have been the time that they might have been hunting mammoths or very large buffalo. If you were to be in the northern part of Canada, there's different kinds of animals than when you come further south. But they would be hunting for and trying to make a life for themselves that would be a hunting and a gathering life. It would not have been farming. It would not have been village based. It would have been based on the seasons and moving around. Does that all make sense? And that is the way that civilizations tend to go. At first, without knowing an area, or as you're just getting to know an area, you are mostly thinking about surviving, and that means food, and being able to address weather and find water, food and water. Like this is how this works. I'm showing you this picture just because I want to also point out here on the left that people who came through this land bridge from Siberia, Alaska, down into North America, this is not quick, but eventually would have ended up through Central America going to South America. Who are the most famous South American civilizations you guys know? Aztec and what else?
Inca.
The Incas. The Aztecs and the Incas are in next year's history book. And why? Because they weren't as ancient as the people we're talking about. We're talking about Native American civilizations that were a lot older than the Aztecs and Incas. But as people moved through and said, oh wow, there's this area, they wouldn't have called it California, but like, this California, I like this a lot better than Canada. Wow, look at this Texas. Whoa, look at Mexico. Well, I really, as people sort of eventually came down and found places to settle, or they found new places to live, or they liked what they were discovering, eventually you have these civilizations that become really famous civilizations to us, but they were later in time than the ones we're talking about right now. Okay, second note, archaic Indians. I forgot to ask, who's doing paleo for your project? All right, so you guys can think about ways to do more interesting research on the paleo. Who's doing archaic Indians for your project? I see 1, 2 hands. I guess Harper's our third one. Yeah. So the archaic Indians were the second period of Native American history. The people were more settled. They dried meat, harvested grain, and used tools. How in the world would historians know that they used tools? Because we found some. How would historians know that they were harvesting grain?
Containers for them.
We might have found the signs of it through the containers, but we wouldn't find the grain because this is so long ago. It would have decomposed. But the things that were used to harvest grain, yes.
They would have found some of the tools they used to harvest grain.
The tools, yeah. Like, what are they using to get the grain? So that's how they would have sorted out that it was grain, the containers or the tools. And how would historians come up with the idea that they were drying meat? Like, what would be the clue if you were going to be a history detective to try to figure that out? No, I don't think anybody used a hairdryer. What would they dry? Like, what would they have found that would?
Wait, like the tablets, or like
I don't think we're not talking about civilizations that were leaving behind writing yet. So not the written word. It would have to be other signs.
Trees, maybe.
Yeah.
They're fossils?
Maybe fossils. So if there was some fossilized stuff, but if it were up in the cold, all right. So there's different ways to think about it. If you're up in the really cold parts of the world and then you die, what happens to your body?
Body gets frozen.
It'd be like preserved, right? They could actually go and look at a dead body from a long time ago and see what they ate. If you die in Virginia, are they gonna be able to tell what you ate?
No.
You're probably just gonna turn to dust, and it's humid and hot, and you're just gonna decompose. But they might find other things like what are the stuff they used to dry it with, or how did they skin it? They would have to just look for artifacts and clues to put stuff like this together. All right, archaic Indians. If everybody's finished, here are the pictures. So the archaic Indians were more stable in terms of they still moved around, but they were not yet building structures that were like towns and villages. So tents made of animal skin, maybe wooden structures that were temporary so they could still do some movement. I think one of the most interesting things I read is that even though there could have been some Paleo Indians in Virginia, most likely the archaic Indians were the forerunners of all the Indian tribes that we know in Virginia. So like the Powhatan Indians would have been a direct connection to the archaic Indians. So all the inhabitants of today, the people that ended up in Virginia, were likely from this. At this point, the largest of the animals are gone. There's not mammoths roaming around anymore. They're hunting deer and elk, and they're using notched points on their spears. What are notched points? Does anybody know this? What's that?
You get stuck.
Yeah, so what is a notched, as opposed to just a straight arrowhead, what does a notched arrowhead do?
It's hard to pull out, right?
It also
Yeah.
rips up the insects.
Oh.
Yeah, so you would use it for what? Yeah, hunting or war, if you're at war with other people. It's much more destructive. So they didn't, the notch points they found for the archaic aren't really arrowheads. I think they were too heavy to be arrowheads, but they would have definitely been spears. They also found tools. They have actual tools from the archaic period. The housing still tended to be temporary. All right, the third one. Who's doing Adena Indians? I see a couple hands. Good. The Adena Indians, this is the third period of Native American history. People were farming and fertilizing crops. They made pottery, and they buried people in huge burial mounds. All right, so as the Adena Indians started farming, what does that do to their civilization? What changes would happen?
They had to be next to water.
They have to be near water. Well, they would have to anyway for their animals and crops, but it's really essential for spreading around. What else? Somebody else said something. They might hunt less because they can grow stuff.
They'd
Would it-
probably be in wetter areas, like lower.
Yep, they probably moved more south to farm because the climate was better for it.
More fertile soil.
Yeah, soil was super important.
Before you started settling down.
Yes, right, Nate. They would build villages. They would stay in a place for a longer time. So when you see farming and fertilizing crops, you're seeing a big transition from people who were hunting and gathering for their food to people who were staying in one spot and farming for their food. This is a big difference. Can you cut the lights really fast so I can show this? They're making pottery. Keep this picture in mind because I want to compare it to the next one after this. But this is a pottery jug from this era. You start seeing actual villages with stable housing. The picture of the farm there is just to say this is a farming community at this point. You see here, this is a mound from this area. They were the first of 3 different civilizations that were mound building. But here you have the Adena, and you see that they're in like Ohio area, a pretty Ohio River Valley. So there was water there, like Zach said, and they were in just a more temperate climate. It was better for they were still moving some, but probably a lot less. So they're building mounds. You know what the mounds are? Bury body on top, a body on top, a body on top. They would like bury bodies on top of bodies and then cover them with dirt and make these giant mounds. This is a pipe from that era, a decorative pipe. I thought was really cool looking, like a smoking pipe. So that would have been hollow right there from the Adena area. This map is a little bit of a transition here. The blue are some of the Adena sites. You can see that they're still around Pennsylvania, Ohio, maybe the western part of West Virginia, Indiana. The next civilization, the Hopewell civilization is even more spread out. Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, a little bit down here. But you'll see this red one, Mississippi. We're not talking about them because they're not BC anymore. That's AD. And we're not getting to the AD Native Americans here. This is the Great Serpent Mound. Probably one of the most interesting things that these Native Americans did when they buried their bodies on top of bodies and formed this is that they designed things that from the sky look like this is like a giant serpent. But they didn't have the technology to look at their civilization from above. So this is one of the most famous, probably the most interesting of the mounds. Serpent mound done like this. All right, last one. The last of the Native Americans is the Hopewells. Hopewells were the most recent of the ancient Native Americans that were still BC. They were also called the mound builders for their artistic burial mounds. They not only created useful but also decorative objects. I want you to underline the word artistic and decorative. That's going to help you distinguish the Hopewells, artistic and decorative. Did you underline artistic and decorative, those words? Who's doing Hopewells for your project? Okay. When everybody's finished, if you can cut the lights, I'll show you some pictures here. Was everyone finished? Sorry, you just cut the lights. Okay. All right, so look at the difference from that last pottery I showed you to this pottery. Students, look at this pottery. Do you see how different it is? It's not, the pottery doesn't only exist to hold something, it exists to be what? Artistic, beautiful, whatever. It's got imprinting, it is a sign of artistry. These are stable cultures with villages, with stable permanent housing. Let me ask you to draw a line in your brain about something. Is there anybody in here who thinks that you might want to grow up one day and be an artist or a writer or something else that's not very practical? Anybody? Yeah? Theater's not very practical. Yeah. All right, so think about this. The only way that it makes sense to have a culture that has artists, or to have a culture that has theater, or to have a culture that has writers, the only way it makes sense to have things that are not practical is if you are not at war. If you are not trying to survive and stay alive. If you are stable. It requires an established, stable civilization to have artists. The Hopewells were a lot more established and a lot more stable, and you see it come out in their artistry, in their decorations, and the fact that they don't just have a bowl, they have a pretty bowl. They don't just have burial mounds, they have lots of decorative burial mounds. They didn't just move around because they had to, following the herds. They traveled because they wanted to. And that's what you see with the Hopewells, is that they collected things from all over the United States and then brought them back to Ohio area. They traveled, which is really interesting when you're thinking this is like America, North America, BC. People who are traveling because they want to. And then they collect things and they bring them back just because they want stuff. That's kind of like you guys, right? Going on a trip because you want to, not because you have to in order to find something to eat. So this is the very last, that class is getting out early, but this is the very last of the the 4 cultures that we decided. Who were my Hopewell people for the Friday? Okay. Do you guys all have some ideas of things that you would like to research? Okay. Are you thinking about what you're going to look up in order to find out more interesting stuff about your culture? And then you can also pick your choose your own adventure, what your project is and what you're going to be doing in it. All right, hopefully this is still on. I'm going to cut the video.